was in a horrific reading slump. In a book, and suddenly I realized that I had a dozen Instagram reels I had to watch at this exact minute. I am giving up TikTok. I have been good, but that does mean that I have since transitioned to Instagram Reels, and let me tell you, it is a dark, dark place. If you are watching this, it probably means that you are currently in a reading slump, so if that is the case, my condolences. Or maybe you are feeling a bit proactive about it and you want to change that. So today I want to talk about how to get out of a reading slump, and most importantly, how we get into them in the first place. Because sometimes the solution is not finding a better book, but realizing that you've accidentally turned reading into some type of Olympic sport. So number one is to remember why you like reading in the first place. And before you ask yourself, how do I get out of a reading slump? I think it's important to recognize why you like to read in the first place. And it sounds easier than expected. I don't think it's worthwhile to say that I want to read for the reasons of such. I want to look smart when I say that I want to read 100 books a year, or that I want to have the most beautiful collection of books behind me like all the other book talkers. No, I'm talking about like, why do you in particular want to read? Like, do you enjoy getting lost in a story? Do you like learning? Do you want to escape from reality? Do you enjoy being swept up in a new world of like magic and fantasy? Yeah, I don't know what the answer to that is. Only you can answer that. And I would proclaim that like you need to reconnect with that. Like that, I don't know when you got back into reading, but almost like childlike wonder of reading. Because at some point, if you read for pleasure and you're not actually enjoying the book and thinking about hitting your Goodreads goal, you're not actually enjoying the book. Like, you're just managing a workload, which is no fun. Number two is be brutally honest about what you want to read. Now, this is probably the most important advice I can actually give you. Read what you want to read. And I mean like actually what you want to read, not what you think you should be reading. Like if you're sitting here thinking, oh, I really want to read this 1,000-page French classic, but what your soul is really screaming for is monster smut. Read the monster smut. Please, I'm begging you. Read what you want to read. Like, you do not get extra points for suffering through a classic book. And I say this as someone who loves classics. I am no anti-classic girly at all. I have a degree, pretty much, in studying classic literature. And you know, I really enjoyed my degree. I am simply anti-forcing yourself to read The Count of Monte Cristo when your brain has the processing power of a potato. Maybe you want to read monster romance. Maybe you want to read Percy Jackson, The Hunger Games. Maybe you want to read erotica. Hell, maybe you need to read fan fiction. Congrats! You rediscovered your love of literature and are no longer illiterate. That's a good thing. That is a good thing. Like, the goal is not to impress your bookshelf. The goal is to have fun and to turn the next page. Number three, lower your expectations. I think one of the biggest problems with reading slumps is that we set these unattainable and incredibly high expectations for oneself. You see someone online reading 5 books in a weekend, and you think, oh, I should be able to do that. But no, you absolutely should not. You don't need to. If you do happen to do it naturally, then go ahead. But you do not. It is not a requirement to do so. And I think it is worth remembering that a lot of people who read this amount of literature are people that do it for work, do it for school, or it's their primary hobby, and they're doing it at the sacrifice of other areas in their life. These are professors, students, and book influencers. Their whole job pretty much is to read, and reading is literally a part of their job and or education. If you're reading for leisure, let it be a leisure activity. There's nothing wrong with that, you know? You don't need to optimize it. There's no tiny man stopping you with a stopwatch and saying, go faster, go faster. Like, you're only on page 60. Like, read 10 pages. Read a chapter. And that's 10 more pages read than if you were on your phone. And another important thing, stop treating reading like a productivity metric. This is where I think reading culture has gotten quite interesting. And I mean that in a bad way, because somehow reading has caught up in the same cycle of productivity culture, and that is not good. I think that we can all agree that productivity culture there are some goods in it, but there's also some bads of it. I think that once it starts harming you, then it's obviously bad. And the productivity culture tells us that we need to optimize everything. And frankly, I think it makes sense how we got here. I mean, reading is seen as an intellectual pursuit, an intellectual's pastime. And you can't just have a hobby anymore. You need to monetize everything. You have to produce something worthwhile and productive. And something worthwhile and productive is something that creates money or enriches your life in a certain way. And you can't just read. You have to read 50 books. You can't just read 50 books. You need to read 100 books. And you can't just read 100. Sometimes you need to read 300, and then you're questioning whether you really love literature in the first place. Social media makes it worse, because online we're seeing these people that read 100 books in a year, and yeah, if you do read 100 books in a year, congrats. But for the vast majority of people, that's simply not possible. Because like on social media, we're seeing these beautifully curated reading lives. Someone wakes up at 5 a.m., makes their coffee, and reads the whole time while doing so. They read 200 pages and still somehow manage to film a TikTok about their book. And I am sitting here being like, I haven't even gotten out of bed yet. Social media gives this incredibly unrealistic picture of what reading books looks like. And that's because social media isn't showing you someone's entire day. They're only showing you 20 seconds of it, which kind of makes sense. Like, if you're showing the most aesthetically pleasing part of your day, of course it's going to look incredibly aspirational to the average viewer. Like, you don't see the sacrifices that someone makes in order to read that much, whether that be at the behest of their social life, their family life, or other hobbies that they have. You simply see the stack of books. You see the beautiful annotations, the pretty bookshelf, and suddenly I feel like I'm failing at reading when I'm not. I'm just a person. So are you. 5. Controversial, but I think sometimes you need to just embrace the reading slump. People get in slumps with all their hobbies, especially if it's just for leisure and you're not being paid for it. Like, I love knitting, but I also haven't knitted in like a while. And that doesn't make me any less of a knitter. That just means that I'm taking a break from it. I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, life gets busy. Your priorities change, your interests change, and it's normal. It's completely normal. You don't necessarily have to defeat it. Sometimes your brain just doesn't want to read, and that's okay. There will always be new releases, new adaptations, new editions of books, new book talk sensations, and then new 5-star reads, and then you're constantly being told that everyone else is reading at the same time. So even when you are reading a book, you're suddenly not reading enough. Hey, I ain't immune. My TBR rivals the size of Everest. At a certain point, you need to give yourself permission to just breathe and take a break from what you're doing, and to say that I don't care what's trending right now. I just want to read something that I enjoy. And that is allowed. Having said all of that previous statement, I'm gonna contradict myself and say that sometimes you really just need to force yourself to start reading. Unfortunately, there is no magical ritual. Sometimes you just have to pick a book up and read. And so if you're in a reading slump, these are some genres that I recommend. Middle grade or YA fantasy. This is one of my favorite slump busting categories. These books are often plot driven and matter driven, incredibly easy to fall into. Like, you're not spending 50 pages contemplating the historical, societal implications of what one person said to another. Something is always constantly happening, and there's a quest, there's something to do, there's a mission, and that's going to get solved throughout this book. Next one, fan fiction. Hear me out. Hear me out. I know people will be scandalized by this recommendation, but fan fiction can be a perfect way to get out of a reading slump, because you already know the characters, you already know the world, you already know the setting, so you don't need to read 100 pages in order to immerse yourself in the world and the characters and what's going on at the current time. AO3 is actually quite convenient in that which you can tick off boxes of what you want to read and then find the perfect fan fiction that you are specifically searching for at that very moment. The entire internet has got you covered. Also, just because the fan fiction is not in Goodreads does not mean that you are not reading. Controversial, I know. There is a whole conversation to be had if fan fiction is literature, and that is another debate for another day. I could never get into fan fiction, however, I vehemently believe that it is literature, and this is controversial coming from someone who is an English major, and someone who describes herself as a bit of a pretentious reading snob, but I do think that at some point, when you are thinking about literature and what it means for something to be literature, you go so far left that you end up right. Like the political spectrum. Sometimes you go so far left and you go right, sometimes you go so far right and you go left. And I do think that sometimes you can become so pretentious that you ultimately come to the conclusion that fan fiction is literature, which I think that I'm at right now. And let me say, I have never felt better. Like, at some point, it becomes highbrow to recognize that fan fiction is literature and has contributed a lot to society and pop culture. Plus, some fan fictions are 400,000 words. That is 4 fantasy novels right there. That's a whole series. So, yeah, Go help yourself to some fan fiction. I give you permission to enjoy yourself. And the next one is to read romance or erotica. Yes, I know romance and erotica are two sides of the same coin, but not exactly the same. C'est la vie. Sometimes you just need to read a book and know exactly what's going to happen. You don't need a complicated political system or a dozen family trees. You just need two hot people to have unrequited feelings for one another and make out. Hell yeah, romance can be incredibly effective during a reading slump because the emotional payoff is so great without buying too much into it. Like, you know what you're getting when you pick up a rom-com or an erotica, and sometimes predictable is not a bad thing. It can actually be a really good thing. And last but not least, read graphic novels. Again, I believe graphic novels are literature, but that's another conversation for another day. Like, if prose feels like too much, maybe try visual instead. Like, you're still reading, you're still experiencing a story, and at the end of the day, you're just giving your brain a little assistance. And if you've been staring at walls of text and nothing is making sense, then seeing a picture could very well be the thing that your brain needs in order to go through a book and enjoy it. And next one is to make reading fun again. Ultimately, I think the best way to get out of a reading slump is to stop asking how can I become a better reader and start asking how can I make reading fun again. And there are two very different types of questions. Maybe you need a new genre, an old fave, or trashy romance. I don't know. Only you know that. Or maybe you don't need to read anything right now. Maybe you're just booked out for a little bit, and that's fine. You don't need to prove that you're a reader by constantly reading, and you don't need to prove that you're a reader by constantly reading things that you do not enjoy. Like, you're not less of a reader because you took a month off. A lot of people take months off of reading, and that's fine. If you are on a reading slump, this is my prescription. Because reading is meant to be an escape. It's something that you enjoy. It's not supposed to be another spreadsheet that you do. And if your ideal reading life involves monster smut or reading Twilight fanfiction, I support you. So anyway, if you are in a reading slump, tell me what book you're planning to read to get out of the reading slump, or what book has helped you get out of a reading slump. I'll let you know. The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan got me out of my reading slump that I was in for the past 6 months. Congrats, Rick Riordan, you got me reading again. If you're in a reading slump, go touch some grass, read some water, and read a fanfic. Because, you know what? We'll try again tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you again next week on Monday. And yeah, bye!